Tim's American Beauty was made by Robust Tools, America's premier lathe manufacturer. Quality hardened tool rests and live centers too. Robust. Built to turn wood. Enjoyed for a lifetime.
Thompson Lathe Tools. Welcome to a new level of professional wood turning tools. Made by a wood turner for wood turners. Today's project is made out of some beautiful bloodwood. Not a great name, but it's a beautiful looking wood. And it comes from South America. This one came from Brazil, I think, this piece of wood right here. It's an extremely dense, extremely hard wood, but you can see the beauty in it. Now, sooner or later, you're going to get tired of going down to your local recycling center and getting free wood. Domestic woods are great. They're softer, they're easier to turn, but the beauty in this wood is undeniable. And I got a special thing. Cook Woods from Oregon sent me a nice shipment of wood the other day. We have zebra wood, Clara walnut, we have African mahogany, we have some great cocobolo here. And this is a blank of bloodwood that we're going to be using for our project. These are all waxed because generally this wood comes green and it will crack if it's not waxed. The cool thing about the bloodwood this time though is this dried for 7 years, so it is hard as a rock. So we're going to have to use some special turning techniques for it. But I want to show you one more thing. They sent me a couple pieces of mahogany down here that are absolutely huge. Look at that. Okay, now if you look at the growth rings on this thing, this is the outside of the tree, this is the inside of the tree, so this is the pith. So this tree was twice as wide as this blank right here. That sucker was big. So I don't know what we're going to make out of this yet, but I have a lot of great ideas for it. The wax that they put on this wood has one other neat little benefit. I don't have to use a pencil to mark my center. I just do scratch marks. They also do a really cool thing over at Cook Woods. Like I said, it's hard to find turning blanks of the diameter you need, but they sell wood for people who make instruments, things like that. Oh, there's my center right there. And they also sell all sorts of exotics for woodworkers. So I know a lot of you out there are woodworkers too. So you can find some really neat wood there. Tuesdays, I think they put up their turning specials, and Thursdays they put up their woodworking specials. Now, not everybody has all the equipment you need to make a project, right? I always say you have to have a lathe, you have to have tools, you have to have a grinder. But having a bandsaw and having a drill press are really nice. But if you can't afford all that right now, we're going to show you how to do this without having to have the bandsaw or the drill press. So the first thing I want to do is drill a 1/4-inch hole in here. And I've got my redneck depth gauge there. I'm from Oklahoma, I can say that. And we're going to drill in here. And this hole is for the worm screw. That's how we're going to hold this on the lathe. One thing when you drill this hole, make sure that you go a little deeper than you need, because if it's not deep enough, this won't hold. It'll be a big problem. So over here, I have my Easy Wood chuck. And I'm going to put it's a double-ended worm screw in here. See this little edge right here? When I put this in here and I start closing the jaws down, I want to pull it till it pulls out and it's resting up against the inside. If I push it down that way, it could work its way out a little bit. So that's there. We're going to undo our headstock here, take our Allen wrench, tighten that down just a bit, and then we go to here with that 1/4-inch hole and put it on the worm screw itself. And you can see the threads start digging in there really nicely. Now, your chuck that you have at home might have a different diameter than 1/4 inch. So, use the appropriate drill bit. And it gets pretty tough after a minute to get this on here, so I'm locking the headstock to help me turn this. Give me a little more grip on the wood. And believe me, you're gonna get this on there and you're gonna think that's tight. Just go a little bit more and it'll really be tight. There we go. That's good. That's not gonna slip and that's not gonna come off. Now, if you don't have the bandsaw, you're gonna have a square piece of wood on your lathe. So how do you round this out? Well, that's what we're going to tackle next. Okay, I've got the blank where I want it. I got my tool rest clear of the wood, and I brought the tailstock up for just a little more support. And as you can see, I've got my face mask on because these edges are going to chip and fly once we get this going, and I don't want them hitting me. Now I have the lathe turned way down. That's slow. The whole idea is we bring the speed up slowly. And there's a little vibration there. Now I'm going past the vibration and it smooths out a little bit. So we're probably going about 300, 400 RPM. Now this is a tough cut to do because you're cutting air. You're trying to figure out where's the wood. So I'm going to look up there at the top and watch my profile, and so I can see right now I'm taking about a 1/8 of an inch there. I've got the tool the way I want it. It's into my hip, and I'm just leaning my body over. Now, if you have a bandsaw and you cut this in a circle, you don't have to go through this process. And right now, take a look at this. We have chunks of wood coming off. We're going to keep cutting a little bit more, and I'm going to explain to you why that's happening. But you don't want to take a lot of wood off at once because you will have larger chunks of wood flying off. The whole idea is to take it nice and slow. You can actually have splinters of this run into your hand too when you're doing this. Now, this is the deal. When you're working with the green wood, you know, that you get at your recycling center or you cut a tree down in your own yard, it's soft. It's really easy to cut. This stuff, like I said, is hard as a rock. It's been dried for 7 years. Think of it. I mean, think of your coffee table. It's made of wood. It's hard as a rock, right? That's because it's dried too. Well, I gotta tell you right now, I just lost the edge on this tool. This is a triple heat-treated, cryogenically treated turning tool, and I have to sharpen it already. What I take 3 passes, and look at the mess this wood makes. Isn't that something? Now, this is a good time to talk about grain direction. I'm always talking about how when you do spindle turnings, the grain's running this way and you go from high to low. When you're turned this way, the grain's running this way and it's a bowl, and you turn from low to high to keep the grain from tearing out. Huh? Well, think of it this way. This is end grain right here. Or actually, this is side grain right here. This is the end grain here. So the grains are running like this in the wood. So as I'm turning here, there's nothing supporting these fibers out on this edge. And see how that tears up? That's what it's all about. If I'm turning this way, I'm coming into the side grains, so all the grains are running, let's see, they're running, it's not easy to figure this out. They're running the other way, so as I'm coming up here, these are being supported, so there's nothing ripping them out. So that's why when you turn a bowl, you have to come from this way. This is also why you have a bandsaw, so you can cut this circle and not make all this mess. But anyway, I'm going to switch tools because I don't want to sharpen every single 30 seconds while I'm turning this. Now the answer to our problems is a carbide tip cutter. And Easywood Tools makes the one I have in my hand right now. This doesn't ever have to be sharpened. Well, as a matter of fact, you never sharpen it because you can't sharpen carbide. Once you wear out the edge, you just turn this and get a new edge, turn it, get a new edge, turn it, get a new edge, and then throw it away and get another tip. And that's what's really cool about it. No sharpening, right? Well, on something like this is going to get the bejesus beat out of it, so I want to use carbide. And you can push in with the carbide like so, but that's not the cleanest way to do this. I want to come in from the side and come across, because those end grains that we're tearing out now are being supported because I'm pushing from the side into other grains. And you want to take your time because this is really catchy. I got a little chip that hit me right there. I'm going to stop this a second and let's see the difference in the cut. There's one of our big torn out areas, and that was already done, but you can see how this is cleaner on the edges now because I'm pushing in across the side and the cut's being supported. So I'm going to go ahead and round this out, and then we'll start turning the shape and working on how we're going to turn it around and hold it on the lathe. You can see now the difference between turning wet wood with a gouge and turning really dry wood with a carbide tool. You get a lot of this stuff. It's everywhere. It also will stain you. If you get any liquid on this, look out. That's why they call it bloodwood. It's used for dyeing clothing and stuff. I'm gonna pull my tailstock back and out of the way, and I'm gonna grab my tool rest here and bring it over to this side. And let me bring it back for just a second because I need to grab my calipers. And this is a 2-inch diameter right here. And that is the width of the recess. Ooh, nailed it right off the bat there. That I want to make that my jaws are going to open up into when I expand them to hold this on the other side. And I want to do this now to get this out of the way. So I'll bring this up here. It also helps me figure out how I'm going to shape the piece, because knowing how wide that is will tell me how wide I need to make my foot and where the curve should start and everything else. All kind of falls in line like that. Now I want to stick with the carbide scraper, and the scraper has to be used on a perfectly flat level with the wood. So I've got that set up right. We're going to bring our speed back up, and you can see that worm screw is holding that beautifully still. So I'm right on center. I'm going to bring this in and push in. I want to make it about a 1/4 inch deep for this recess that I'm making for my chuck. And that looks good there. I'm going to come here and kind of clean it up just a little bit. You don't really want to use the entire front of this tool when you're making cuts, except when you're doing light scrapes like this, because it'll get too aggressive and catch, because it is very sharp. Even though it's a scraper, it's very sharp. Now I'm making a straight line right here. I'm sneaking up on where my mark was. And let's see, we're about, not quite a 1/4 inch, but it looks pretty good. I want to take a little more out here just to make sure I'm at the right depth. And we're going to grab our skew. The only time we're going to move away from carbide today, because we need to make an angle on the inside of this tenon to fit the dovetail tenon on my jaws of my chuck. So we're going to bring this across. Now we're perfectly flat. I'm trying to make sure that we're flat on the bottom. I don't want it to go higher up into the middle, like come out this way, because that'll affect the hold of the jaws. So I can still leave that at center, just like it is. Grab my skew and come up here at an angle. There we go, just taking light shavings. I'm going to bring this across. I'm going to try to make a nice finish on this with the tool, because this is going to be done when it comes off the lathe and turns around. I don't want to come back and work on the bottom ever again. And that looks really good. Now that we're ready to shape, we want to talk aesthetics a little bit. This votive holder is sitting like that on the lathe. We just did the base. Now, look at it. Not a single straight line on this thing. It curves from the bottom, it curves here, and it even curves on the rim right here. The only flat part is right there on the bottom. The other thing is okay, this is up about 2/3. And then this line right here is wider than the foot. So your eye is drawn down and there's nothing there. It comes into the curve. Up here, this is even narrower than the foot. The whole idea is you don't have a bunch of symmetrical stuff lined up. It challenges you. Your eye flows with it and looks at the whole thing. And the other thing, the reason I did such a simple design is it shows this beautiful wood. It exposes the beauty of it, and I love that a lot. Now, what we're going to do on here is this blank's a little bit different sized. It's about 6.5 inches square when I got it, and it's also about 3.5, 4 inches thick. So I want to kind of just eye it in, and I'm thinking right about there is 2/3. So that's where I'm going to shoot for that rim. So we're going to turn this on just for a little bit. There, I made a mark. Okay, turn it off. Now, we could start curving this and make a perfect curve as we go, but we know we want to make a curve that's going to kind of go like so. So we got to lose a big chunk of the corner. And the quickest way of doing that is I'm going to go back to my square shaped carbide tool, and I'm just going to start bringing it in this way and step it and get rid of all the extra wood I don't need. And it's a quick way of getting stuff out of the way. I'm not worried about tearing the grain. Now, since I'm talking, I should have a face mask on just so I wouldn't be eating all this, but since this is rounded out, I really don't have any fear of any pieces of the wood flying off at me anymore. I went to my goggles, which I like a lot better, and you can hear me a lot better too. But anyway, I'm gonna worry this down just a little bit, and then we're gonna go to a round carbide tip cutter, and I'll show you how we clean up the surface. Now you can see we made our steps along here. You can see our curve, right? And it roughed it out really quickly. Now I'm going to use the round carbide tip cutter. I love this tool because it's an easy, gentle tool to work with. And if you apply it right, you don't get little catches like that. You want to make sure it's always flat. I had it rocked up just a little bit. That's why it jumped a bit. But now this is the technique for moving your body and stuff with a carbide tip tool is kind of like when using a bowl gouge. Did it again. But at the same time, I'm using more hands and more arms because I just want to kiss the wood with the tool. I'm taking very light shavings off of here. I still kind of have a triangle here, but at the same time, my body is a little bit more of a lumbering movement. So I want to use my fingertips a little bit more to help me direct the tool around the wood and make gentle cuts. Now I don't want to hang out too much over here, so I'm going to move the tool rest in a minute to finish that curve. Down here on the bottom, I've got a little more control. And you want to take very, very light cuts because there's a lot of end grain that you're cutting through. There's also the fact that this is a 7-year-old dried blank will make it very hard to keep the wood clean, the surface clean. That's a hard thing to explain. I'll show it's easier. If you look right here, you can see that there's a little mark right here and a mark right here. And then if I go right here, this actually looks pretty good. Normally I'll have some, little rough marks where I've gouged it and torn the grain out a little bit. That's by taking the tool in too aggressively. The whole idea is to avoid that because if you have the torn grain, you have to turn it away in this situation. You cannot sand it out. It's too daggum tough. The wood is too hard. So I'm gonna keep curving this surface here. And once I get this shape the way I want it, we're going to move some of the wood out up here on the lip, and then we'll turn things around and start working on where we're going to put the little votive. Now, before we take this and turn it around and start working on the top, I want to sand the sides and the bottom. And I've said ad nauseum that this is really, really, really hard wood. Well, really, really, really hard wood takes a special sandpaper. And America makes a paper called Abranet. And it's been used in the automotive industry for quite a while. And I don't know if you can see, but you can see through it. It has openings in it. And that helps all the dust and stuff clear through it so it doesn't clog up very fast. But also, I'm not really sure what the grit is on it, what they make it out of, but this stuff lasts a very, very long time. If I took regular sandpaper to this, I guarantee I'd get like 2 passes, have to get a new piece of sandpaper, and that would get expensive really fast. So I still have this on the lathe. I moved the tailstock back. I have my breathing protection right here on me, and the HEPA filters running in the background, and there's my googles. Put those on. And I'm using a sanding pad holder that's chucked into my drill. So this is going to spin like this, and then when I turn the lathe on, it's going to spin in its rotation. And those 2 rotations help you to make a very smooth surface quickly. Now I'm going to slow it way down because I don't want to build up a lot of heat, and since this is really tough wood, it's going to make a lot of heat. But the whole idea, get my tool rest just out of my way a little bit because that's going to hurt. There we go. I'm just going to hold this into my hip, start it spinning, and start moving my body back and forth. And I'm only going to do a section at a time because I can't bend that far. I'm not that limber. But the whole idea is to get rid of any tool marks with this. I'm starting with 80 grit. And this is the grit I'm going to use to get rid of every tool mark. If you leave anything in there, the next grit will not take it out. So this is your most important grit, and you want to spend the most time with it. And you see it's cutting beautifully. We're going to work our way from 80 grit then all the way to 320 grit. That was easy. Okay, now we have the blank reversed in the chuck. Those jaws went out into that hole and they're holding it really tight. I'm going to drill a hole now for my votive, and I have the depth mark to where it's going to be a little bit proud of the edge. I want it to stick up just a little bit. So I've got my little gauge on there with the tape and a mark. I'm still at the speed I had when I was sanding, which is a perfect speed for drilling. Actually, I'm going to bring it up just a tick. And I'm going to bring this in, and I don't know how dull my bit is after doing a few of these. There it goes, that's cutting good. This will get hot. Look at that smoke coming out of there. You don't want to cause a fire in your shop. That's not a good thing. So to help us out just a little bit, I'm going to take some wax, some beeswax, and just put it on there. You can see it starts to melt right away. That's how hot this thing is. And that'll help lubricate it a bit. A bit. It won't make it perfect, but it'll lubricate it a bit. So we're just going to plunge all the way in there. We're going to bring it out again, clear those chips out. When you're doing this, do make sure that you don't see any of that smoke on your floor before you leave for the evening. That'd be a bad thing. Put a little more wax on there. And this should be our last plunge cut right here. We'll see how this goes. This really isn't that bad. It looks like a fire, but it's not. There we go, right to our mark right there. I'm going to turn this off and pull it out. Now that I've established the width of this, that is not quite wide enough for my Votive. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hollow this hole out so this fits in here, not really tight, but loosely, so we can take it out and replace it when we need to. And I've been working on widening out the hole for the candle, or the Votive as we call it. See if that slides in there now. That's good, and the depth is good. I wanted it to be just a little bit proud right there. And I'm going to clean up the inside just a tick more because I don't want to leave any tool marks in here. And I switched to an easy wood. It's not a square tip now, it's actually got a slight radius on it, but it's a much longer handle, which really helps me out because it gives me more leverage as it's here. All those forces, it keeps me balanced and keeps it from pulling down on me. Turn this on here, and you can see it's just got a slight radius to it. So what that means is I'm only touching on these edges, and these tips are curved, so I'm not going to go into the corner at the bottom of this hole and get a sharp edge right into a corner, which could get me a catch. And this is fingertip. This is really fingertip. See the tiny little slivers of wood coming out there? I won't have to sand this. If I do, I'm a fool because I don't want to stick my fingers into this hole with sandpaper because I could break them. And it's also a lot of work. So this is working good. That looks really good, and I'm very happy with that. So now, as far as aesthetics go, I want to figure out how wide my lip should be. And let me grab a pencil here. Now, from your angle, you can't see it, but the foot is about right here. This is about where the width of the foot is. So I actually want to make my rim out to here and then make a nice shallow cove going back that way. So to do that, I'm going to move the tool rest and we're going to go back to our round cutter. Okay, I've put my live center with a cone on it again, and I'm bringing that up there, and the cone helps it fit right into that hole. And so it makes, it holds it without really marring the wood or anything, which is really nice. And the reason I'm doing this is, even though this is held with an expansion jaw, this is still really tough wood, like I've said. So I want to make sure that I have all the support I can get while I'm making the next cuts. I'll bring up the speed here. And you can see that earlier I had used the square tip carbide to kind of step out some of the wood. Now we want to make a cove, so we want to dish this in and out. Well, remember about wood grain with the parts of the what do you call it again? The fibers. Thank you very much. Been breathing too much dust. Anyway, the fibers are coming at me, right? So I need to push this way to make the cleanest cut. If I push this way, I'm going to tear the grain. So this is going to be like a pull cut the entire way. So we bring this up here. I'm going to tighten it up just a little more. And we're just pulling back. We're just taking little bits of wood off. And we're just going to start forming a curve. And you can see I have a ways to go before I get to that line I made too for my lip. So, whoops, again, flat. Got to put it flat. So we'll start working our way to the lip first, and that'll help me get an idea of what my curve should look like. Or my cove, so to speak. Now, inspiration might hit you while you're doing this, which it seems to be hitting me right now, along with shavings. But I'm almost thinking of putting in 2 coves here. Now, if you make your design too busy, you're not going to show off the wood, which is a bad thing. But sometimes the shapes you make can enhance the look of the wood too. So we'll keep coming down here and we'll bring this in. There's a little defect in the wood down here that's kind of catching the tool too. And I've always said I like ugly wood. So if there's a defect in the wood, I like to highlight it and expose it as much as I can so people can see that this actually was a natural product. But anyway, I think I'm about there. I'll just stop this and let you see the shape. And if it's the one I like, I'll leave it like that and we'll start sanding. And then we'll go to the finish. Let me take a peek here real quick. Oh, that's cool. And there's the defect I was talking about. See that right there? That's beautiful seeing that. So I kind of like this. It kind of sweeps up with that sculpting right there. Dadgummit if that didn't work out good. I'm just going to sand, then we're going to go to the finish. Now one thing before I sand, since I changed my design and made the lip wider, so I don't want to cove it out now because I want to keep this as wide as possible. So what I'm trying to do is make some symmetrical lines right there. And we're just going to take this little detail tool, it's carbide, and I'm going to come in here and make a nice deep groove. And what we're doing is just making some marks that'll draw your eye into the votive when it's in the holder right there. So that looks good. Now, back to the sanding. Now, because these curves are so sharp and narrow, only my finger fits in there. I couldn't use that big mandrel. The good thing about this is you do feel the heat if you push too hard, so it keeps you from really gouging the wood out by using too much pressure. But the Abernet, you can hang on to it really well. And there we go. I'm going to work my way through 320 on this. Now for the finish. I'm using one of my favorites. It's a Danish oil by Watco. And this is basically an oil with an accelerator in it, so it dries quickly. You can put on 2 coats in about an hour. And look at the wood pop out. I mean, isn't that incredible? That bloodwood is awesome. Now, I didn't mention it, but my votive that I got, I bought it Big Lots. I don't know if you have one, but I'm frugal, so I went to the place where I knew it'd be the cheapest rather than one of them fancy places that sells all the pretty smell and stuff. But anyway, the neat thing with the Watco is you can put this on and you can do 1 coat, wait like 30, 45 minutes, and then put on the next coat. The first coat you put on needs to be nice and heavy, and really, literally, the whole technique to it, let it sit and let it soak. Make sure you protect your hands, have good airflow in here so you don't get high on the fumes. And anyway, once you do that, you're going to wind up with a beautiful votive holder. So I hope you really enjoyed this project, and until the next time, keep turning.
Tim's American Beauty was made by Robust Tools, America's premier lathe manufacturer. Quality hardened tool rests and live centers too. Robust. Built to turn wood. Enjoyed for a lifetime.
Thompson Lathe Tools. Welcome to a new level of professional wood turning tools. Made by a wood turner for wood turners.